Welcome back to this holiday version of Uncover the Human. It is just Christina and I here today. Hello, Christina.
It is. Hello. And clearly it's Easter, if anybody's looking at our YouTube.
Yeah, it's definitely not a Zoom filter. We just are very good at putting up the exact same fake lights above our head.
Yes. That connect in the middle perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, I like because it's a mirror video, it really just it's nice symmetry.
Yeah. I know. They know what they're doing. So yes, it is Christmas time, end of the year holiday, whatever the PC version of we're supposed to be saying is.
Wrapping up the year with some kind of celebration in some way, shape, or form that is culturally appropriate.
Yes. That has a Santa hat. So we know
Yes.
one holiday is part of this.
And speaking of not knowing what to say and of fake decorations, our theme is authenticity. So that's what we wanted to revisit today.
Fake
We
decorations is part of
have obviously
authenticity.
that's our authentic lack of knowing what to call the end of the year, our trying to gaslight people into believing these are very real lights. I think this is so authentic.
It goes very well. Oh, I just thought about the second topic we wanted to talk about that I thought we could talk about gaslighting, since it's the word of the year.
Word
Let's
of the
go.
year.
The
Oh,
word of the year is gaslighting, which is to veer off from authenticity a little bit, which I find to be,
I hope that's different.
which yeah, I find to be very accurate. So it's like part of me is relieved that it's now that we're not being gaslit about gaslighting. So it is out in the open and acknowledged as a thing and as a traumatic thing that causes a lot of internal trauma and external, honestly, because who can show up authentically when gaslighting is the hobby of the moment around them? Uh, but I also find to be extremely sad as a commentary of the state of the human race.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in this kind of weird point where that it is, and I think it does tie to authenticity, not in that hopefully they are different, experiences, but it does tie because if there is gaslighting, you can't be authentic, you can't have
Mm-hmm.
that connection, and it's very hard just to know where reality and some kind of stable shared understanding is when there's gaslighting at play.
Yeah, when you show up when you show up as yourself and somebody's actually manipulating your thoughts and feelings about how you showed up and whether that was real or not and effective or not, yeah, that's definitely not boding well for authenticity or long-lasting success in relationships. I mean, make the list. It's a long list of what's not going to work out well.
I think that will be our holiday episode will be the long list of things that won't be working out well.
Yeah. Why to not
Well,
gaslight?
one of those things that if you have to say it, where are we?
That's the sad part, is that you actually
Yeah.
have to say it.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it's a good thing we're acknowledging it. This is part of kind of authenticity too, because there is something authentic about actually acknowledging these things. Authenticity doesn't mean it's all sunshine and lollipops. Authenticity is about being real, and acknowledging things like gaslighting is a very real part of that. And that acknowledgement, I think, is something that we are understanding more and more every day, not just of gaslighting, but the actual idea of acknowledging reality we've had driven home, I think, a little bit by the pandemic. Everything got spun out. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
disconnection, a lot of fighting, a lot of disagreements, and a lot of just again disconnection. We couldn't be close. We couldn't really have that. And I think that as we all put our social skills back on after the pandemic, there's a lot of this kind of ongoing acknowledgement that I'm a little bit relieved to see personally that people are a little bit more willing just to talk about how life is and not feel like they have to put on some kind of facade and some kind of this is how I act in professional environments, because we just had 2 years where professional and personal environments were exactly the same.
Yes. Well, they always are, and they've
Yeah.
always been.
Yes.
So
But
again,
now
it's
suddenly we can
eh,
talk about that.
yes,
Like,
but
wow,
now it's okay
we ignored it before.
to have a pet cross our screen and
Mhm.
acknowledge that, like, oh wow, like you actually have kids. You don't just talk about having kids. You actually have kids, and that means that you have 1.5 million things to do outside of the work stuff that you do, or at the same time as the work stuff, depending on the moment.
Yeah, that gives me a funny image in my mind that there would be somebody out there who faked having kids all this time, and then when COVID happened, they were like, "Hey, Dave, show us your kids." He's like,
Yeah.
actually, they're at school. They go to a different school."
Yeah. A different universe and version of
Speaking
reality.
of gaslighting,
Yes.
oh, how many people were found out there?
Yeah. They actually have kids. It's like when you're dating in the early stages of your life, or even maybe in the later stages of your life, and you know that you have to fake having a significant other, because the the other side of those conversations with family and sometimes even friends in quotes is more painful, and so
Hmm.
there's that fake boyfriend, fake girlfriend, fake whatever.
We can create a totally different list on this podcast of the fake things people have during the holidays. Like, oh yes, I definitely have a new career. Nope, definitely have this. No, definitely have that. I have this in mind because I am not having this conversation again. And
Yes.
insert name here.
Yeah, that definitely does not help with showing up authentically when there's all these outside expectations of what life is supposed to be like,
Hmm.
and how we get gaslit and judged and excluded and unfriended. Um, that list of the un is very long.
Yeah.
When we can't just say this is where my life is now. I'm in between jobs. I'm not looking for jobs. I don't have a significant other outside of my pet. I don't have a pet. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling well. I am
Mm-hmm.
lonely. I am struggling, which is becoming getting normalized, which is nice to be able
Yeah.
to say I'm not doing well. We're not quite
Mm-hmm.
there yet. I think we're scratching the surface of, you know, um, if getting to that point is like hitting the iceberg for the Titanic, well, the Titanic doesn't even, exist as a concept, that where we are in that journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And so much of it comes from seemingly almost well-intentioned things. Like people
Mhm.
have, some prescription of what life should look like, but then it becomes this unnecessary pressure to live only to that, which is not only just unrealistic because it's not going to be shared, and it definitely would not be an authentic version of life for everybody. You can't prescribe an authentic life for people. But even if you could, even if that was possible, which again, just to be very clear, I do not believe is possible. But if you could, even then, their life is bumpy, right? That if even if
Mhm.
you had a plan, you wanted to do something, it's just not going to go according to that plan. And being able to actually talk about that can be very liberating. Whereas feeling like we have to have all of this extra facade up over things like the holidays, or having to go meet everybody that we've talked to, or family or friends or people we haven't seen in a while, that creates a lot of extra pressure based on almost well-intentioned assumptions, like, well, shouldn't you want to have this part of life sorted out? Like, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but either way, it's a bumpy road, and we can't being able to acknowledge that allows us to actually work on that and share in that, and just have that community that I think is mostly what people intend with things like
Mhm.
getting together with family. There's an intention of that community, and the intention of like all the judgment that ends up coming out, I think starts in a good place, but it really does a lot of damage over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I would even venture to start questioning what figured out is.
Mm.
Does having a job, a title, a significant other, a pet, a house with 3-car garage, does that mean that I figured it out?
Yeah.
Who's figuring what out, and who's judging the figured out?
Yes. Yeah. Back to the idea that there's no prescribed life, because if you have an authentic life, it's authentic to you. Like I definitely in no way, shape, or form want or need a 3-car garage. That whatever whoever's definition of success that is, that's just not going to be part of my life here. So that's not where. So if that's it, then no, I'm never going to have that figured out, nor would that make me feel particularly figured out. My life is something completely different, and that amount of acceptance is a huge part of what we had kind of started with on some of our definitions of authenticity. And I think we've understood even more now is it requires some of that social bond of allowing for that difference, that somebody else's authentic life is entirely different than ours. When I say figured it out, maybe it's about whatever you want to figure out at the time.
Yeah. Which I think we address with our question when we ask our guests and ourselves. Is the question is not what's the definition of authenticity, is what's your definition of authenticity? Because, well, the answer needs to reflect the actual question itself. There is no one definition of authenticity. We are expecting it to be different every time.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of that.
That's one common theme in a lot of our answers, is like when you get to be your true self. And because that's such a common theme, I mean, think about what true self means. True self has to be individualistic. It has to be an answer that is per person, and it can relate to other people. I mean, maybe your authenticity is about how you're showing up in communities or without, but it is something that is very personal to the person in question, the one defining it.
Definitely. So our original plan was to talk about what we've learned about authenticity.
And then we gaslit ourselves.
Yes. And then we veered off as very true, authentic way of us talking to somewhere else. And now we're back. So what have we learned about authenticity?
One thing that I'm struck by now, the more we talk to more people, both about authenticity, and the more I have it kind of at the forefront of my mind when I'm thinking about interactions, is how powerful it ends up being as a tool for leadership. And I don't mean leadership in the strict like organizational sense, although it 100% plays a role there. When you are just able to be authentic, that what that allows other people to do, and you gain, I think, that social connection with people, and it's easier to, I don't want to say follow, but it's easier to at least enjoy the example of somebody who is being authentic, and it's much more comfortable because you don't feel like you're putting up a mask, or you're judging or understanding somebody else's mask. I'm really struck by that more and more these days, and something I've learned a lot over the last year particularly, but how important and powerful it is.
I would definitely agree. And as you were saying that, I realized how, at least for me, because again, it's authenticity. For me, it's a necessary foundation for trust. And how when we can sense that authenticity is kind of in the passenger seat or in the back seat, or, well, left at the curb with other people, we know that we know that from the beginning, and we may or may not want to acknowledge it, because we do a master job at gaslighting ourselves when we don't want to acknowledge that authenticity is missing, because we may have other objectives. We may want to not lose the connection. We may want to hope that there is a connection that there isn't, or not at the level that we expect it to be. We hope to be accepted. I mean, there's so many reasons why we would convince ourselves that the person is being authentic, and the conversation, the relationship is authentic, while we deep down know that it's not, that there's something maybe missing. And I can't remember where I was going with that in a very authentic way of talking. But when I think about trust, and I think about what can happen when there is trust between human connections and relationships, the sky really is the limit. The what
Mhm.
how much gets created and established and can really flourish between people that have trust is way beyond, I think, anything that we have the capacity to think at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that trust and vulnerability portion comes up for me, that because that it for all the reasons you listed, it is difficult at times to be authentic. Maybe we don't want to lose a connection. Maybe we're kind of fooling ourselves and thinking there was some kind of connection. Maybe we think we have to be something some way. So it takes vulnerability to allow that authenticity to come forward. But to your point, the cost of not doing that is inevitably harder than well, at least for good relationships. There's reasons to protect yourself, but in good connections and good authentic connections, the cost of the fear that vulnerability will it always ends up manifesting. The cost of vulnerability feels very scary to jump into, but if you don't do it, you end up costing the relationship or feeling like you're not being authentic, or to your point, you feel like there's that deep down, this is not the authenticity I thought it was, or
Mhm.
this, that I know there's something not real about what's happening here. And you can't see past that once you get to that
Mhm.
point.
Yeah, definitely. From a work perspective, I would say that the last year has solidified the need for authenticity in work relationship and in work connections. But it also has taught me to accept the other side's authentic self. So there's a lot of letting go of the judgment, letting go of if we walk into a meeting and energy is not high, participation is low. I would say in the past, it would have been a prime place for self judgment and thinking like, oh, I'm not providing value. This is a waste of time. I, I don't know what I'm doing. Any of those, or at least for somebody that has that default mind of not being good enough. I think that's a highway to that side of the world very quickly when the meeting is not going as you expected. But you can actually have authentic meetings where you show up as your best self, you show up as your most authentic self, and then you let go of the rest.
Mm.
And whatever preconceived notion of how the meeting should have gone disappears fairly quickly. And if the meeting doesn't go that way, because again, it's a judgment to say it was good or bad. Who's deciding if it's good or bad? Maybe this particular meeting needed to be all more about silence and thinking and contemplating and being distracted and not showing up.
Yeah. That judgment piece is huge, I think, when it comes to authenticity, for that both of those reasons, the self and the other. Because it's very easy to feel like, oh no, I'm not doing the right thing. I haven't provided value. And if you start to move out of that, it's also easy to fall into the camp of they're not engaging. Why aren't they doing this? And then you get the judgments of the others. And either way, you're costing yourself some level of authenticity because you're not giving the chance to understand where that person's at, where they might just authentically feel currently at the time, much less what you're doing and what that means to them. All of those are prescriptions and ideas that you're writing, that you don't really have confirmation of. You don't live in that person's head, and having that leeway has been a huge learning lesson, I think, for me as well in this over the course of the work year, is understanding that what it really means to give that space and just how much it costs when we end up in judgment.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen. I found myself asking myself certain questions to kind of gauge the meter of authenticity at the moment, and be, I guess, that the measure of success in what we've been doing for the last year. It's the measure of success is not monetary. It's not how many people participated. It's not based on how many answers we got. It's not how fast we've moved people through transformation and change. The measure of success that I have kind of defaulted to quite a bit is it's really was this authentic moment. Did we show up authentically in this PowerPoint, in this communication, in this interaction? Or do we try to show up based on what we thought would be best accepted in order to, I don't know, not get fired, be liked, you name it. And so I think some of our products that include using memes and funny gifs and even sending quotes when we find one that it's that we find interesting. I think that's where I know this is who we are. We're showing up authentically. We're not here to be liked and to gain that. We're here to show up as ourselves. The rest, it's out of our control. We may or may not be the right fit for some people, and that's okay.
I 100% agree. That's been a huge lesson. And that for me goes back to the idea that I kind of started with and I was thinking about was that the power that authenticity brings. Because when we can be authentic and when we don't come across and we're being authentic enough that people see that, resonate with it, and don't feel like we're putting up a face, they start to engage that way, which turns out to be a very successful strategy for helping people with change, because you're giving them the comfort in a space that's inherently uncomfortable, something like change and transformation. Like when you're asking people to do something new, when you're asking people to grow, when you're asking people to change, there's going to necessarily be some discomfort. And if we show up only polished in an overly prescribed professional quote unquote way, then we start to lose the battle. We start to look like we're just lecturing. We're not actually helping people. This is just some idea, some cookie cutter idea that may or may not fit this person's situation. And when we really play in that authentic space, both for ourselves and allow people to have that, it's turned out to be successful on the business front because it's successful on the authentic front.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that it's important to overcome and to point out is that it is scary. It's scary to show up authentically every time. And do we get there 100% every time? Absolutely not. But if the intention is there, we can get a little bit closer. And it is extremely scary. It's, the thought of we're going to get booted. We're not going to provide the value. We're not going to succeed, whatever, our measure of success is. It is there. And that's part of the authenticity, is like, I acknowledge that the fear is there. We are social beings. Our first measure of success as a human person is whether we're included or excluded from the tribe and the group in front of us. So yes, it is there all the time. But that's when the choice comes in.
Yeah. That's, I think, crucial to all of this, because we live necessarily as social beings with that paradox of, I want to authentically be myself, while simultaneously there is a deep and survival based, absolutely trigger your amygdala fight or flight response to not feeling like you belong, for the reason that we are a social being. And so we have to live in this paradox of being individuals and being social at all times. And that leads to that necessary, scary feeling every time you have to be vulnerable and authentic and try and bring yourself there, because you feel like you're risking the other thing that we all crave. We crave authenticity. We crave belonging. I feel like we're at the beginning of like a good ABC of authenticity and belonging. Of
crave connections.
What's needed? Yeah,
we need
belonging, connections. Bam.
Yes,
we have a whole new webpage.
ABC.
But that those almost conflict, and you have to keep them in enough balance that you get the reward and the feeling of being part of a tribe, that you get that connection, you get the support from that, which we inherently naturally want, desire, and greatly benefit from, as long as we also bring that authentic piece in there. And so that requires the community, the connection, to allow for that, and that can be challenging in itself.
Yeah, definitely can. Yeah, so I would say that's probably the big learning lesson is it's not just okay to show up authentically and cross your fingers and hope it goes well. It's a requirement for things to go well. And
Yeah.
then having the definition of going well being I was able to be myself. The value is us being ourselves. It's not the 4,500 PowerPoints we've created or Excel spreadsheet or step by step instruction. That's not the value. The deep down value, it's not that. The deep down value is trust established.
That's absolutely true. And the fascinating portion of that, when you talk about the 4,500 decks that we have made that are slowly crashing some OneDrive server out there somewhere, somewhere bending under the weight of the presentations and gifts that we have thrown out there, they become, in a way, an artifact of that journey towards trust. That those are pieces of it. Those end up becoming little bits of showing that authenticity. They aren't the value themselves, but the stuff that is on them, what we put into them, that is the authenticity that we're bringing to it. And so there is value in those decks, not because they are decks, not because there is a quantity of them, not because of exactly what's in it, but because it is a continual opportunity and a true physical, at least digital, artifact of the relationship and trust building.
Yeah. If they're built with authenticity as opposed to built with,
yes.
well, you know, we're professional consultants and coaches. You can't put a joke in a slide. You can't show up with a Christmas hat on or with your gigantic mug. That's not consultant like.
And everybody has great feelings about traditional consulting, so.
Including us.
But I think, yeah, but I think that actually that's probably a little bit why. I mean, it feels so stodgy, so unnecessarily buttoned up to the point where you can't really connect with it. At which point, it's back to your original point. You can't trust that. You can't have the trust built on something where you feel like there's a facade here. And being professional is being professional. That's great. You shouldn't go in and scream at people or I don't know. All the there's obviously the limit of that, just of social boundaries, but it's not the same as being so rigid. You better not tell a joke.
I would say
why are we all
not yelling? Not yelling at people. It's about being respectful, non-professional. It has nothing to do with being professional. How about we respect other humans and not yell at them, whether we work with them
that
or
is an
not.
Important and necessary clarifier. Good call. Oh, but I think that is it. That's why it doesn't meet up, because it's not just about that. It's the respect. I think, but my definition of respect has expanded to have to include some amount of authenticity because of that. The respect is me showing up as myself and not trying to give you some facade. And again, to your point, it's not something that happens 100% of the time. It's just that the value is only really there in the relationship and the trust and what you can do together if you can infuse that. And it'll never happen 100% of the time. And we're emotional beings. We're all going to have different energy levels at all times at different days. What are we bringing to the table is different. That authenticity looks different a little bit day to day, minute to minute. And that's fine as long as you're bringing that to the table and people can trust that.
Yeah. Well, and I found that even that can be done authentically. It's okay to not bring 100% of your energy to the table. And it's even better when you say that up front. It's like, hey, end of the year, not going to happen. That's an authentic way to show up. I saw this great graphic over the weekend in somebody's post on LinkedIn that it was this gigantic elephant in a room where obviously the room was too small for the elephant. And it just reminded me how a big part of us showing up authentically at work, well, and at home and in all life is not being afraid to just point at the elephant in the room and really have everybody pay attention to the elephant in the room, and yes, and just really just like flashlighting the elephant in the room and not pretending it's not there. It's like, how about we just, there's an elephant. Anybody else see the elephant? Can we do something about the elephant before it squeezes us out? And that's tough. That's one of those authentic, scary moments of like, this is clearly nobody wants to address the elephant, and clearly it needs to be. So let's put ourselves out on the line and on the little plank over the crocodile in Peter Pan, and hope that we don't get eaten when we do that.
It really does feel like one of those like movie moments where there's just like two people talking back and forth, and they're like, "Yes, but what about that?" And then the camera pans over, and there's something looming right there. Like that's what pointing out the elephant feels like. We all know it's there, but like the audience is almost kept out, and the audience in this case is what we're allowing into the conversation. We're pretending like it's not there. We're pretending like the frame is this big, where realistically, that elephant is the background and is about to sit on you.
Yeah. Indeed. That's another way of showing up authentically. It's like, talk about the elephant. The elephant doesn't want to be here. It needs way more space. Let the elephant go.
Authenticity is difficult for that reason. It's difficult to show up. It's difficult because it's scary. It's difficult because you don't know how people are going to react. And it's difficult because people will react slightly different. Even the same person will react differently over time. And being able to hold that grace and space for yourself, for somebody else, that's scary. There's no better word for it. It's just hard to do.
Yeah, very hard. So I think that's what we've learned. It's hard.
We've learned that it's hard
and it's worth it.
It's hard and it's worth it every time.
Yeah, 100% worth it every time.
So I hope everybody gets a chance to bring that to their holidays too. I know that we will, and we will have many stories to share about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and good luck with that. Because if authenticity is hard and worth it the rest of the year, it's on hyperdrive how hard it is during the holidays.
Yes. That's the weird part about holidays, the expectation that everybody's happy. Like, yes, but they won't be. Like, even if it is generally a happy occasion,
they won't be.
There's gonna be moments where it isn't, or it's been a lovely dinner and now we've dragged it out for 7 hours and people are now starting to lose it. Nobody really wants to lose the feeling that was there, but it's already passed, and like that's difficult. Oh man, the landmine of trying to hold on to authenticity for that.
Yes. Our wish for everybody is show up authentically for the holidays.
Yes.
Because the disappointment is going to happen no matter what. So it might as well happen for everybody else and not yourself and by yourself.
It's a prime opportunity to start telling yourself, well, I should be enjoying this. I should be doing this. Or you could give yourself the vision to be like, right now, this is exhausting me, and I'll still be able to enjoy other pieces of this. And, maybe I just need a break right now instead of the like 4,000 rigidly scheduled regiment of things that people will inevitably put together. It's great. It's great to have those things, but the flexibility is kind of key in that, because the expectation is going to eventually wear you out. And that's the elephant in the holiday punch.
Oh, it reminds me of this picture of myself and my family from Christmas. It was around Christmas time, must have been when I was, I must have been 10. And I'll have to post it or do something with it because it's classic. It's one of those superposed, everybody sit in exactly the right spot. It was, Christmas time or whatever holiday time at the moment, which is why it's the whole family, including my grandmother and my aunt. And, we're all together. And so we're supposed to be happy and we're supposed to be smiling for the camera. And mind you, this is one of the few prints from back in the 80s that we have of that occasion. And I'm sure there were like 1,000 versions of that portrait. And yet in this one, there's not a single smile, and everybody looks completely pissed off or bored. It is picture of authenticity in that moment.
Oh, I think you just hit the holy grail of both examples and metaphors, because if a family portrait where I remember having to take certain family portraits where they're like, and you turn your shoulders exactly 45 degrees here and tilt your head just to the left, and your brother's going to tilt his head just to the right, and everybody looks like they're like trying, like mannequins that got forced into a position. Like that is the definition of like an almost authenticity of like what we're trying to portray that clearly isn't real, and the one that you're talking about where everybody's actually pissed off, that's authenticity.
I have a few of those pictures. It was definitely when I look at some pictures of myself as a baby and as a child, I was like, I was mastering the authenticity through camera on film thing. One of my first, which I'll have to post those too, but one of a couple of just baby pictures when I was, I don't know, a few months old pictures that I think went into my passport. I am just clearly pissed off. There is nothing else that's happening in that situation. And yeah, this other picture just reminded me of that, because there's like half of the people are looking somewhere else. The other half are just like, are we done yet?
For those just listening, Cristina just stone-faced.
It is awesome. I have to definitely show it and find it and show it.
That's a really great reinforcer for why it's important to be authentic, because like, do you remember any of the other family portraits? No, those are much harder to remember, and they don't mean anything. The one where everybody finally broke character and just was like, I am truly just pissed to be still sitting in this studio waiting for this photograph. There's the authenticity, and that's a good reminder that looking back, you're going to want to know the authentic things. The greatest pictures are the candid ones, the offbeat ones, not the photo perfect agenda.
Yeah, which everybody can see through anyway. It is so clear when the photo perfect pictures are made photo perfect, because there's zero amount of authenticity in that.
Yes. Yeah. I want to see the real holiday photos.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody needs to
we'll do our best to post our most authentic holiday photos, either from years past or from this year, as part of this episode, because that's worth it. That's the memory that these are the ones that mean something. That when you were authentic, that's what actually means. That's what actually counts in the end.
Yeah, definitely. So have a good holiday.
Have a good holiday.
Well, hope you had a good holiday, because you'll probably listen to this after the holidays. Hope you had a good holiday.
We assume you guys are all unwrapping this on Christmas.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, any holiday. I've now stepped in it again. We're back on a specific holiday.
It may be unwrapped for Chinese New Year. We don't know yet when this is going out, but if you're watching the video, you'll know.
Maybe one of the 8 nights of Hanukkah. If that's not over, I'm going to need to really do some buffing up on my culture.
Yes. We've got lights and a Santa hat. So that's when we're recording it.
Ta-da! Authentic.
Indeed. Well, thank you for listening.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy authenticity.